Ukrainian forces fired rockets at a facility in the eastern Donetsk region where Russian soldiers were stationed, killing 63 of them, Russia's defense ministry said Monday, in one of the deadliest attacks on the Kremlin's forces since the war began more than 10 months ago. Ukrainian forces fired 6 rockets from a HIMARS launch system and 2 of them were shot down, a defense ministry statement said. It did not say when the strike happened. The Ukrainian military appeared to acknowledge the attack Monday, with the general staff confirming that Makiivka was hit on December 31, and saying 10 Russian military vehicles were destroyed or damaged. It added that Russian personnel losses were still being clarified. In a claim that could not be independently verified, the Strategic Communications Directorate of Ukraine's armed forces had maintained Sunday that some 400 mobilized Russian soldiers were killed in a vocational school building in Makiivka and about 300 more were wounded. The Russian statement said the strike occurred in the area of Makiivka and didn't mention the vocational school. The barrage was the latest in a series of relentless year-end attacks, including one that killed 3 civilians on New Year's Eve. On Monday, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that 40 drones headed for Kyiv overnight. All of them were destroyed, according to air defense forces. Klitschko said 22 drones were destroyed over Kyiv, 3 in the outlying Kyiv region and 15 over neighboring provinces. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of energy terrorism as the aerial bombardments have left many people without heat amid freezing temperatures. Ukrainian officials say Moscow is weaponizing winter in its effort to demoralize the Ukrainian resistance. Moscow's full-scale invasion on February 24 has gone awry, putting pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin as his ground forces struggle to hold ground and advance. He said in his New Year's address to the nation that 2022 was a year of difficult, necessary decisions. Putin insists he had no choice but to send troops into Ukraine because it threatened Russia's security, an assertion condemned by the West, which says Moscow bears full responsibility for the war. Russia is currently observing public holidays through January 8. Ukraine's Air Force Command reported Monday that 39 Iranian-made exploding Shahid drones were shot down overnight, as well as 2 Russian-made Orlan drones and a X-59 missile. A blistering New Year's Eve assault killed at least 4 civilians across the country, Ukrainian authorities reported, and wounded dozens. The 4th victim, a 46-year-old resident of Kyiv, died in a hospital on Monday morning, Klitschko said. Multiple blasts rocked the capital and other areas of Ukraine on Saturday and through the night. The strikes came 36 hours after widespread missile attacks Russia launched Thursday to damage energy infrastructure facilities, and the unusually quick follow-up alarmed Ukrainian officials. Moscow admitted heavy casualties suffered in a Ukrainian strike on the Russian-occupied Donetsk region in one of the deadliest attacks on the Kremlin's forces since the war began over 10 months ago. Russia's defense ministry said Monday that Ukrainian forces fired rockets at a facility in the eastern Donetsk region where Russian soldiers were stationed, killing 63 of them. Ukrainian forces fired 6 rockets from a HIMARS launch system, and 2 of them were shot down, a Russian defense ministry statement said. It did not say when the strike happened. The strike, using a US-supplied precision weapon that has proven critical in enabling Ukrainian forces to hit key targets, delivered a new setback for Russia, which, in recent months, has reeled from a Ukrainian counteroffensive. The Ukrainian military has not directly confirmed the strike, but it seemed to acknowledge what appeared to be the same attack that Russian authorities reported. The Strategic Communications Directorate of Ukraine's armed forces claimed Sunday that some 400 mobilized Russian soldiers were killed in a vocational school building in Makiivka and about 300 more were wounded. That claim could not be independently verified. The Russian statement said the strike occurred in the area of Makiivka and didn't mention the vocational school. Meanwhile, Russia deployed multiple exploding drones in another nighttime attack on Ukraine, officials said Monday, as the Kremlin signaled no let-up in its strategy of using bombardments to target the country's energy infrastructure and wear down Ukrainian resistance to its invasion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of energy terrorism as the aerial bombardments have left many people without heat amid freezing temperatures. Ukrainian officials say Moscow is weaponizing winter in its effort to demoralize the Ukrainian resistance. On Monday, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that 40 drones headed for Kyiv overnight. All of them were destroyed, according to air defense forces. Klitschko said 22 drones were destroyed over Kyiv, 3 in the outlying Kyiv region and 15 over neighboring provinces. Energy infrastructure facilities were damaged as a result of the attack, and an explosion occurred in one city district, the mayor said. It wasn't immediately clear whether that was caused by drones or other munitions. A wounded 19-year-old man was hospitalized, Klitschko added, and emergency power outages were underway in the capital. Moscow's full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, has gone awry, putting pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin as his ground forces struggle to hold ground and advance. He said in his New Year's address to the nation that 2022 was a year of difficult, necessary decisions. Putin insists he had no choice but to send troops into Ukraine because it threatened Russia's security, an assertion condemned by the West, which says Moscow bears full responsibility for the war. Russia is currently observing public holidays through January 8. A new airstrike targeted Kyiv in the early hours of Monday, according to authorities in the Ukrainian capital. Sergei Popko, head of the military administration in Kyiv, urged locals to stay in shelters and reported that 20 aerial targets had been shot down. It comes after a New Year's Day marked by dozens of Russian strikes that left at least 4 people dead and 50 injured in the capital and elsewhere in the country. The attacks continue to target critical infrastructure, with Moscow claiming it was aiming for unmanned aircraft manufacturing facilities. Russia has been attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure for months, with millions losing power amid sub-zero wintry temperatures in the country. We won't give them anything. Following the New Year's Eve attacks, one major in the Ukrainian army stated, the Russian occupiers have fired 16 times with multiple rocket launchers, in particular at the Children's Hospital in Kherson, a southern city regularly bombarded since it was reclaimed by Ukrainian soldiers in November. The Russians are losing. Drones, missiles, and everything else will not help them. Because we are together, said President Volodymyr Zelensky. And they won't take a single year away from Ukraine, they won't take away our independence. We won't give them anything. We respond to every Russian strike, on all our cities and communities, he added. Russia said that from Saturday to Sunday, a long-range precision airborne attack against Ukrainian defense industry facilities involved in the manufacture of attack drones used to carry out terrorist attacks against Russia. Moscow often describes Ukrainian military operations on Russian territory or against Russian infrastructure in Ukraine as terrorist acts. Ukraine war, Zelensky and Putin both promise victory in New Year speeches. Kyiv under fire again, just half an hour into the new year. The Russian army has also declared that it will continue its offensive in the Donetsk region, in eastern Ukraine, where most of the fighting is currently concentrated. On Sunday evening, Ukrainian forces said that the enemy continued to attempt attacks in the Bakhmut sector. Russian forces have sought to seize the region for more than 6 months, at the cost of heavy losses on both sides and unimaginable destruction. Scores of Russian soldiers were killed when Ukrainian missiles struck a building in the occupied Donetsk region of Ukraine over the weekend, one of the deadliest days for the Russian military since the war began more than 10 months ago. The ministry said 2 rockets were shot down but 4 slammed into the building and surrounding area. The ministry said 63 service members died in the attack, although details remained sketchy. Dmitry Azarov, governor of Russia's Samara region, said an unspecified number of civilians were among the killed and wounded. Ukrainian authorities did not claim responsibility for the strike but estimated the death toll at nearly 400, sarcastically blaming careless handling of heating devices, neglect of security measures, smoking in an unspecified place. Igor Strelkov, a Russian military blogger and former defense minister for the breakaway region, said on Telegram that the building was almost leveled after ammunition stored in the same building exploded. Daniil Bezanov, an official with the Russian-appointed administration in Donetsk, called for punishment of officers who ordered a large number of troops to be stationed at the facility. The next Ukraine-EU summit will be held February 3 in Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office said Monday. Topics are expected to include the EU's further support for Ukraine and an assessment of Ukraine's progress toward membership in the bloc. Russian officials claim to have shot down a Ukrainian drone approaching the Russian city of VER.GE, almost 400 miles from the Ukraine border. No damage or injuries were reported, the regional government said in a statement. A Ukrainian drone struck an energy facility in the Bryansk region of Russia along the Ukraine border, Bryansk regional governor Alexander Bogomaz said Monday. A village was left without power, he said. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke by phone Monday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, pledging to soon begin dispersing $18 billion in aid in monthly payments. She added that the EU would support Ukraine through the winter with generators, light bulbs, shelters, school buses, and other necessities. Russia deployed multiple exploding drones in another nighttime attack on Ukraine, officials said Monday, as the Kremlin signaled no letup in its strategy of using bombardment to target the country's energy infrastructure and wear down Ukrainian resistance. The barrage was the latest in a series of relentless year-end attacks, including one that killed 3 civilians on New Year's Eve. On Monday, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said 40 drones headed for Kyiv overnight. All of them were destroyed, according to air defense forces. Ukrainian forces shot down 45 Iranian-made Shahed drones fired by Russia on Sunday, the first day of 2023, Reuters reported. The country also carried out one of the deadliest missile attacks against Russia during the war, resulting in 63 deaths. As air raid sirens sounded in Kyiv, residents stood on their balconies, shouting, "Glory to Ukraine! Glory to heroes!" Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Sunday night that Russia's waves of attacks with drones and missiles will not help them, because we stand united. They are united only by fear. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the latest attacks caused no reported injuries. U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Bridget Brink tweeted that Russia's latest attack was cowardly. Ukraine also launched a substantial attack on the occupied Donetsk region, specifically hitting a building in the city of Makiivka, BBC reported. The country fired U.S.-made HIMARS, 2 of which were shot down, according to a Russian statement. The casualties were largely due to the ammunition stored in the building. Russian President Vladimir Putin gave no sign in a New Year's address that Moscow would ease up on its ongoing series of missile and drone strikes. The Russian Federation has claimed that a drone launched from Ukraine was shot down near the city of VER.GE on January 2. As the press service of the authorities of VER.GE Oblast has reported, the air defense forces shot down a UAV launched from Ukraine near VER.GE. Nevertheless, there were no casualties or damage, and the authorities have control over the situation. Earlier, Alexander Bogomaz, governor of Bryansk Oblast of the Russian Federation, stated that a Ukrainian drone damaged an energy supply facility in the Klimovsky district of the oblast on the morning of January 2. Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of Belgorod Oblast of the Russian Federation, said that the armed forces of Ukraine attacked the village of Murom near Shebekino. There were no casualties, but windows shattered and roofs were damaged in 2 households. In addition, 1 car was damaged as well. Neither of the Russian officials commented on the night drone attacks on Ukraine that Russia carried out on New Year's Eve and on the night of 1–2 January 2023. President Volodymyr Zelensky reported in his evening address on January 2 that Russia is planning a long-term attack using Iranian-made Shahed 136 drones. Only 2 days have passed since the beginning of the year, and the number of downed Iranian drones over Ukraine has already exceeded 80. And soon, this number may increase. Nights can be quite restless during these weeks, he said. Russia may bet on exhausting us. But we must and will do everything to ensure that this goal of the terrorists fails, like all the others. Russian forces launched a massive strike against Ukraine using Iranian-made Shahed 131/136 kamikaze drones overnight on January 2. Ukraine's air defense said it had destroyed all of the 39 drones. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said that energy infrastructure facilities in the city were damaged in the attack. Russian troops have repeatedly attacked energy infrastructure across Ukraine since early October, killing dozens of people and causing electricity, water, and heating cutoffs. Russia acknowledged that dozens of its troops were killed in one of the Ukraine war's deadliest strikes, angering Russian nationalists, including lawmakers, and drawing demands for commanders to be punished for housing soldiers alongside an ammunition dump. In a rare disclosure, Russia's defense ministry said 63 soldiers had died on New Year's Eve in the fiery blast which destroyed a temporary barracks in a former vocational college in Makiivka, twin city of the Russian-occupied regional capital of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. 4 rockets fired from US-made HIMARS launchers hit the site, the defense ministry said. It said 2 rockets had been shot down. Ukraine said the Russian death toll was in the hundreds, though pro-Russian officials called this an exaggeration. Separately, Ukraine said on Monday it had shot down all 39 drones Russia had fired in a 3rd straight night of airstrikes against civilian targets in the capital Kyiv and other cities. What happened in Makiivka is horrible, wrote Archangel Spetsnaz Z, another Russian military blogger with more than 700,000 followers on the Telegram messaging app. The open fury extended to Russian lawmakers. Grigory Karasin, a member of the Russian Senate and former deputy foreign minister, not only demanded vengeance against Ukraine and its NATO supporters but also an exacting internal analysis. The Kyiv government almost never publicly claims responsibility for attacks on Russian-controlled territory in Ukraine, and President Volodymyr Zelensky did not address the strike in his nightly speech on Monday. Russia has turned to mass airstrikes against Ukrainian cities since suffering defeats on the battlefield in the second half of 2022. After firing dozens of missiles on December 31, Russia launched more than 80 Iranian-made Shahid drones on January 1 and January 2, all of which had been shot down, Zelensky said. A separate missile attack in eastern Ukraine destroyed an ice rink in the town of Drushkivka, a venue in Donetsk region that had hosted Ukrainian championships and international competitions, Donbass Ice Hockey Club said. Russia launched around 40 drone strikes on Kyiv in a fresh wave of overnight attacks, Ukrainian officials said. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said on Monday morning that all drones were intercepted and destroyed by Ukrainian air defense forces. He said 22 drones were destroyed over Kyiv, 3 in the outlying region and 15 over neighboring provinces. An infrastructure facility in the capital was damaged and an explosion took place in one city district, Mr. Klitschko added. In the larger Kyiv region, a critical infrastructure object and residential buildings were hit, Governor Alexei Kuleba said. 7 drones were shot down over the southern Mykolaiv region and 3 more were shot down in the southeastern Dnipropetrovsk region. It is the latest in a wave of major Russian attacks on Ukraine within 24 hours. At lunchtime on New Year's Eve, missile attacks on Kyiv and the western city of Khmelnytsky killed 2 people and injured 50. Ukraine was subjected to a cowardly barrage of fresh attacks by Russia in the early hours of New Year's Day. Russia claimed that attacks had struck Ukraine's drone production facilities. It comes as British defense chiefs said that Russian and Ukrainian forces have been fighting for control of the P-66 highway over the last 5 days. In its latest intelligence briefing, the MOD said, over the last 5 days, Russian and Ukrainian forces have probably been fighting for control of the P-66 highway, north of the Russian-held Luhansk Oblast town of Kreminna. Ukrainian drones have hit air bases inside Russia over the past few weeks, and on New Year's Eve Moscow's air defense systems were raised to high alert. Russia wants to destroy Ukraine's heating infrastructure to undermine civilian morale over the winter, but observers have said that 10 months of war have hardened the population. Less than an hour before the drone attacks, President Volodymyr Zelensky referenced this tough Ukrainian spirit in his New Year's Eve address. Jens Stoltenberg, NATO's Secretary General, warned on Sunday that Ukraine's allies must be prepared to provide long-term support as Russia shows no signs of relenting. Mr. Stoltenberg told the BBC that military support would ensure the survival of Ukraine as a sovereign country and force Russia to negotiate an end to the war. The ombudsman added that Kyiv is focused on securing the release of Ukrainian civilians from Russian captivity. The Ukrainian state does not abandon attempts to return civilian prisoners, he said. The problem lies with Russia, not with us. Moscow now requests a separate, diplomatic framework to discuss civilian prisoners. That's what we'll be talking about. Lubinets further hinted more good news on POW exchanges could come later this week. On December 30, Ukrainian officials said that at least 3,000 Ukrainian soldiers remain in Russian captivity, with 15,000 more people registered as missing. We can state today that Russia's position has not changed. The goals set at the beginning of the war, we are not talking about demilitarization and denazification, remain. The main goal is the destruction of Ukraine. What terms they use is not important, as a sovereign state, as a nation, and this has not changed. The main reason that they insist on Ukraine's capitulation, read the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, is that Russia is just not able to take into account the facts and realities that have developed up to this point. It is obvious that during at least the last 3 months, Russia has not achieved any success of this kind, or even any operational successes. And there are more and more compelling reasons to believe that Ukraine is capable of conducting another successful offensive operation on one of the other fronts. Vladimir Vladimirovich, something went wrong, but we are now preparing mobilized troops, and in the near future there will be 150,000 of them, which is even more than Russia had before the invasion. Our conscripts called up in the spring can fight in 3 months, and our Ural-Vaganzavod works in 3 shifts. There is still an alternative source of information, the so-called Russian military bloggers, But Putin has long given government positions to the most influential ones and brought them closer to his circle, where they have already begun self-censoring. This is why Putin is protected from bad news and NBSP. The pseudo-leader Dmitry Medvedev wrote a forecast for 2023 the other day. This is how the Kremlin imagines everything. He said that while everything may not be very good now, in 2023 everything will be as Russia dreams.